Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're skipping the fluff and stepping right into what I like to call the mental courtroom. We're literally putting your very own beliefs on trial. You see, one of the most profound realizations you can ever have is that your own thoughts might actually be betraying you, creating this entire cycle of misery completely on their own. But today, we're going to learn exactly how to cross-examine them.
Okay, let's dive into this. Do you believe everything you think? I mean, it sounds kind of absurd at first, right? Of course you do. They're your thoughts. But the truly unsettling reality is that our minds lie to us constantly. They fill in gaps, they assume the worst, and they build these complex, dramatic narratives out of absolutely nothing. If you blindly believe every thought that passes through your head, you're essentially letting a highly unreliable narrator dictate your entire life and emotional state.
Stephen Crane really hit the nail on the head when he wrote, "He who can change his thoughts can change his destiny." And honestly, the stakes of what we're talking about in this explainer are incredibly high. The source material outlines a pretty brutal reality. Our distorted thoughts trigger painful feelings, and those painful feelings lead straight into self-sabotaging actions. Then, the cycle just repeats. By changing how we process these thoughts, we are literally altering our destiny.
So, how do we actually do this? Well, we need a system. Let's move into Section 1, the suspects, breaking down the cycle.
We're going to use this brilliant clinical tool borrowed from cognitive behavioral therapy, but completely adopted for everyday use. It's called the ABCDE model: activating event, belief, consequence, dispute, and effect. This beautifully structured acronym gives us a precise, mechanical way to step in and forcefully interrupt those negative thought spirals that normally just run on autopilot in our brains. Let's break down exactly how these steps operate in the real world.
All right, step 1 is A for activating event. This is simply when, well, something happens. It could be an external event, like someone ignoring you in the hallway, or an internal one, like suddenly remembering a past failure. Let's use a highly relatable scenario directly from our source material. You receive a short, vague text message from a friend. Now, this is a friend who usually sends long, cheerful texts packed with emojis. But today, just a short, abrupt reply. Boom. That is your activating event.
Now notice the massive gap here between reality and the manufactured crisis. The objective fact is literally just a short text message, but look at how rapidly the brain fills in the gaps with a spontaneous belief. They hate me and I did something wrong. Nobody wants to deal with me anymore. It's wild. In literal milliseconds, completely without your permission, your brain has manufactured a full-blown crisis out of a few pixels on a screen.
So, the absolute crucial point here is the B, the belief. This is the automatic interpretation, that little story your mind instantly forms about the event. And here's the kicker: most people completely skip over this exact step. They don't even realize it happened. They mistake their wildly irrational, automatic belief for absolute, undeniable fact, and they just accept the story as reality.
Because they accept that belief as a hard fact, they immediately suffer the C, the consequence. This is how you feel and act in response to your belief. Going back to our text message example, because you firmly believe your friend hates you, the consequence is that you feel deeply hurt. You feel anxious. So how do you act? You withdraw. You completely avoid sending a reply, and you spend the rest of your day ruminating and isolating yourself. The cycle of misery is complete, all because of one unquestioned belief.
But here is exactly where we stop the cycle. Section 2, the trial, cross-examining your thoughts.
I want to slow the pacing down right here. Take a breath. This is the cognitive pause, where we enter D, dispute. This is the climax of our mental courtroom where we actually fight back. We treat the belief like a hostile witness in a trial, pressing hard for facts and demanding evidence. Is this thought actually true? Where is the hard proof?
Now, what's really interesting about this phase is that when you start investigating your beliefs, you'll find they very often rely on false witnesses. In psychology, these repeat offenders are called cognitive distortions or thinking errors. They're systematic, irrational patterns of thought. Let's look at 3 of the absolute most common ones that show up in the mental courtroom.
First up is catastrophizing. Imagine your car makes a strange noise and your brain instantly goes, "Oh, great, it's going to cost an absolute fortune to fix." Catastrophizing is when we excessively focus on and expect the worst possible outcome. A minor setback instantly becomes an unrecoverable disaster in our minds.
Next is mind reading. You think, they haven't texted back, they must be mad at me. It's this erroneous, frankly arrogant belief that we somehow know exactly what other people are thinking. And of course, we always assume their motives towards us are negative. We're literally inventing their anger out of thin air.
Finally, we have emotional reasoning. I feel anxious, therefore something terrible is definitely going to happen. This one is incredibly common. We genuinely believe that our internal feelings are an accurate reflection of external reality. But you have to remember this rule: feelings are not facts. Just because you feel a sense of dread doesn't mean a threat actually exists. Your feelings should never dictate reality.
So how do we cross-examine these errors? We use the Socratic method. Ask yourself directly, is this thought actually true? Do I have concrete evidence for this, or am I just mind-reading? Is there another way to interpret this event? Let's go back to our text message. What's another interpretation? Well, maybe your friend is just super tired, maybe they're driving, maybe they're completely overwhelmed at work and it has absolutely nothing to do with you. The very moment you introduce alternative realities, that negative belief instantly loses its power.
Once we successfully dispute the irrational belief, the trial concludes. Section 3, the verdict, changing your reality.
Here is where the hard work of self-reflection really pays off in our daily lives. We arrive at E for effect. This is the new belief, the fresh outlook, and most importantly, the behavioral change that follows a successful dispute. The source text stresses something super vital here. Do not skip this step. If you do the heavy lifting to challenge a thought but don't pause to register the positive effect, the whole process is useless. You must consciously give credit to your new, calmer feelings and your changed behavior.
And this brilliantly illustrates how the process completely transforms the outcome. Instead of the old consequence, feeling hurt and isolated over a totally fabricated story, you experience the new effect. You're calm. You decide to reach out the next day without any panic, keeping you connected. Changing your thoughts literally changes your behavioral outcome. It changes your reality.
To keep this internal courtroom running efficiently every single day, the source provides a powerful, permanent framework from author Byron Katie, known simply as the 4 questions. When you're suffering from a stressful thought, ask yourself, 1. Is it true? 2. Can you absolutely know that it's true? 3. How do you react when you believe that thought? Really notice the physical and emotional toll it takes on you. And finally, number 4. Who would you be without that thought? Just think about that for a second. If you simply dropped the assumption that your friend was mad at you, who would you be right now? You'd be free. You'd be at peace. That is the incredible power of cognitive restructuring. It gives you the ability to step right out of the misery cycle and back into reality. So the next time you feel a sudden wave of anxiety or anger, I want you to look at your own mind and ask, who would you be without that thought?